Welcome back to AM Northwest. You know, with employees that span from baby boomers to Gen Z, the generation gap looks a little different in today's workplaces. Here to share how to bridge those gaps and thrive in a multi-generational environment, we welcome back executive coach and personal brand strategist, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
So workplaces are looking a little different.
They're looking very different, right? So the idea of generational diversity has been popular for the last 20 years when a book came out called Generations at Work, when they were explaining the different generations. But now what's fascinating is that we have 7 generations right now that are occupying various levels within the workplace, and they have massively different, values and ideas about what it means to work. And, generations are defined by the environment in which they grow up in.
Sure,
and so that's what the times, right? So that's what's informing all these changes and differences.
Yeah.
So right now we have, like I said, 7 generations. So the traditionalists that are usually born between 25 and 45, we see them mostly in the political landscape right now that are kind of controlling and making the rules of our society. And they're the ones who really established the foundation of the workplace as we have. The 40-hour work week came out with them. And then we have the boomers from 46 to 64 that were like the architects of the structure of the workplace that we have. They turned the 40-hour work week into the 80-hour work week. They were all about competition and achievement and getting their corner office, the first one in, last one out. And then Gen X that came behind them from 81 or 65 to 80 were watching their parents work that hard and decide they wanted to have more work-life balance because they grew up when divorce was popular and there was dual income families, and so they were left at home as latchkey kids. And then the generation after, the millennials that came 81 to 96 were the advent of the tech generation, right? So they grew up really more savvy, they became more social conscious, the global landscape was theirs, and they started valuing diversity in a way that we haven't seen before. And then after that came the Gen Z that came right after them that were born from 97 to 2012. And they're the true digital nomads of our society because they grew up in an age where they saw nothing but the internet and nothing but digital technology.
And so many of them make their money that way. So we have all these different generations, and Gen Alpha is coming behind them, right? They were born, the first generation born in this millennia that will think of the 1900s like we think of the 1800s. Right? So we have these generations that have completely different experiences that are bringing different values, different beliefs into the center of the workplace. So I have got to believe then that you have to recognize the strengths that each of them has.
Absolutely. So every generation brings something different. The older generations, the boomers and the Gen Xers, bring problem-solving abilities. They're able to handle critical
and
crisis management, a lot of experience, from what they bring to the table. And so that's something to be valued. The middle generations are kind of the generation that are able to speak boomer and the younger generation. So they could bridge the gap really well. But they're also, great with problem solving as well, and bringing people together and having community and really coming up with new ideas for things. And the younger generations bring a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity and a fresh perspective, and an idea
and
towards
they're the ones that
social
can help
issues.
You figure out any tech gadget you have.
It can help you figure out any tech gadget that you may have as well. So, I mean, there's strengths at every level. And so it's important as a leader who's trying to build a collaborative workplace that you understand that they're just not differences, and you just don't think, oh, those millennials, right? But you think, wow, what can they bring to the table, and how do you cross-populate that?
You've got to then build bridges.
Absolutely. And the best way...
Because it's easy to complain.
It is easy to complain, and everyone does. Every generation before it does. I was talking to somebody in the green room about The Gilded Age, that new show that's out, and if you watch that, you see that older generation complaining about that new generation.
It's been around for
It's been around forever, right?
Yeah.
Because we are comfortable with change, and what does that mean for us and being obsolete? So you have to really build bridges, and one of the best ways to do that that's been talked about is have reverse mentoring. Like have the younger generation, kind of mentor the older generation, right? As opposed to always having the older generation be mentoring to the new generation. Creating projects where you're having cross-generational teams working together. How you communicate, how you engage in training is very different. I remember when I used to train 20 years ago, we still had the overhead projector, right? And now we're having virtual reality when it comes to training, right? So how you communicate and how you engage in training is a great way to bridge that divide so that other generations could really bring their knowledge to the table, and older generations can learn even more.
And you've got to keep the biases out, like keep an open mind.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing that's fun about generations is that you have these generalizations about them, but it doesn't mean that everything is true. Generational diversity is very American-based, so from a cultural perspective and across other places, it doesn't really apply.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that, A, that's a generalization. There's so many factors that go into it, like class or how you grew up or where you grew up.
Sure,
So you
totally.
can't just assume because someone's in an age group that they're going to have that personality or those
Yeah.
traits of that generation. So you have to check your biases and just not assume that people are going to be a certain way because they're in that generation, or unable to learn because they're in that generation. So you really, the same way for older generations, you can't assume that boomers aren't tech savvy.
Right.
Right? You know, so we have to really check our biases and be open and not be judgmental about the generations,
Right.
and really be open to everything that they bring to the table and the strengths that they bring, so that you can really have a cohesive and,
Yeah.
and harmonious workplace.
Absolutely respect everyone.
Absolutely.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.